He's the best man. We're waiting for this.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening everyone. Where to begin? Let's begin with Sylvie. Beautiful, kind, radiant, éblouissante. The bride, please join me. In addition, French. What more could you ask of a bride? Thank you, Sylvie. Clifford. Cliff. What can I say about him? Well, what can you say about Clifford? We all feel that we know this man before us this evening, but how many of us truly understand him like I do? For many of you, Cliff is an enigma, wrapped inside a riddle, huddling for shelter within a paradox, buried deep beneath the ground in a coffin that we call confusion. To Cliff's sisters, he's Dippy, one of the funniest brothers they have ever met. A modern day Bruce Forsyth, or Jacques Tati for the French among us. To his nephews and to his nieces, he's a latter-day cat weasel. You need to be of a certain age for that one. Pierre Richard, Fantomas. A nomadic wizard with a limited sense of personal hygiene, bringing mischief and mayhem at every turn. But to the family of the bride here today, he can only be one thing: a deep and dreadful disappointment. The marital equivalent of a 1970s children's TV presenter. But who, or what, is he really? En bref, qui est cet homme-là? Now, before I go any further, I just need a quick show of hands just to be absolutely sure about this. Can you please raise your hand if you think you have at least the faintest idea who Cliff Bevan is? Please just raise your hands there. Okay. I'm seeing, I guess, around about 50%. That's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. So I presume those who put their hands up feel that they could accurately identify Clifford in a police lineup legally required to do so. 50% in that sense is not bad at all. Well, for the rest of you who didn't put your hands up, let's start with the basics, shall we? And I learnt a few basics just today. We probably all know at least part of his name. The first bit, Clifford, or Cliff, and the second bit, Bevan. Simples. But really, his full name? How many of you know and can pronounce that? For Hugh, Clifford, Croysdale, Dylan Thomas, Daffy, Neil Kinnock, Dippy, Gavin Henson, Tom Jones, Ivor the Engine, Clapop, Rob Brydon, Voldemort, Gogo Goch Bevan, is a man, as his name suggests, of many, many hidden parts. Most of them are Welsh. It's these hidden parts that I would like to explore with you today. For Sylvie's family, let me start by introducing myself. Bonjour, je m'appelle Robin, je suis le cousin de Clifford, mais en fait, ça ne suffit pas. Il n'est pas seulement mon cousin, il est mon double cousin, presque mon frère. Je vais tout expliquer dans un instant. Et je m'excuse si la plupart est en anglais, mais ma cousine Katie, elle parle couramment français, elle va faire une traduction directe. Alors, mais non, je cherche pas les victimes ce soir. Mais Sylvie, I need your help at this point. Could you please stand? Thank you, Sylvie. Now, I know from earlier this afternoon that you're very good at this bit, at least in French. So, would you please repeat after me, but in English this time? I am truly prepared.
Oh God. This is going on.
I am truly
prepared
to explore today Clifford's dark passages.
I'm not sure.
Clifford's dark passages.
Clifford's dark passages.
In short, I'm ready to taste.
There's a lot of bad imagery in there.
I'm ready to taste
And short, I'm ready to taste.
the bitter essence of this man, who I must now from henceforth call my husband.
What?
Who I must now call my husband.
That's no for my husband.
Thank you, Sylvie. That's given me the validation I need to continue with the things. Thank you. You may now be seated. You're brave, you're a wondrous lady, but it's precisely because we're about to journey into the profound darkness of Clifford that I must ask all parents with children still present who are about to listen to this to perhaps consider using these rather impressive noise-reducing ear pom-poms that we invented only yesterday. You see, they love Clifford. My daughter's the same, and there are parts of what I've got to say today that I really wouldn't want them to hear because the truth is just too dark for young and hopeful minds. Yes, I'm afraid that Cliff has a dark side, if you want him to. He can have a dark side too. En bref, Clifford est maléfique, et je vais le prouver. The moral black hole that is Clifford is hinted at if you speak to his close family as I have and ask them to give you a picture of his younger days. From Samantha, where is Samantha? Samantha, sitting over there. Came these insights. She wrote me a deeply confessional personal letter in which she wrote the following, and I'm quoting directly. As a little girl growing up, Cliff, I'm quoting directly, once spent 2 hours hiding in our toy cupboard just so that he could jump out and scare us. She likened camping trips with Cliff to something out of the Blair Witch Project, punctuated by Clifford's nocturnal grunts and groans. She tells how Clifford taught her to punch, and confesses how Clifford himself used to, quote, delight in beating her. His use,
You never used to let
his
us
use, these are your words, Samantha, I'm afraid, directly quoted. His use of the Vulcan death grip was a tiresomely familiar sight around the malt house at Taliban. So, what do we learn from this? Well, the little girl growing up phrase certainly casts new light on Cliff's confused sexuality. Whilst his other more sadistic leanings certainly begin to at least hint at a twisted, evil persona struggling for supremacy inside his tiny, half-formed body. Katie, where are you, Katie? Thank you. Thanks for identifying yourself, because again, you've said some amazing things.
You are so in trouble, friend.
She gave me more insight into the tortured soul that's in front of you. Katie said this: we play games like the snake and crocodile pit. He always won, of course. Of the incident about hiding in the toy cupboard, Katie says this: he prepared thoroughly and would hang a pair of socks on the ceiling light just so that he could jump out and say, "Shocked your socks off!" She said, this would really frighten us, but it made him laugh. A deep, evil laugh that terrifies me even today as I write this to you, Robin, which you are directly quoting. So, planning, skilled execution, and a delight in other people's pain. A pattern is beginning to emerge. From Kerry. Kerry, please identify yourself. Thank you. We learn more about the deep roots of what I can only call is Clifford's psychopathy. She wrote to me this: I was thrilled to have a baby brother, but I used to shout in his ears. It all went downhill from there, she said. Fiona and I, Kerry wrote, used to plan to get rid of him. Usually, this involved us tying him up. We invented knots so that as the young Cliff struggled, he would slowly strangle himself. Can you believe this? Kerry goes on, again, quoting directly. As a teen, he and his mates played Skull, where the skull, usually Cliff, was blindfolded and walked around with a rifle trying to shoot the other two. There was another classic within the family, yet wholly inexplicable incident, where Cliff simply chose to drive himself and the family sit-on tractor straight into the swimming pool. A cry for help, perhaps. Or perhaps just one of Cliff's first small, random acts of terror. Kerry ends with a warning for us all. He is still the funniest person I know. Simply chilling, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, indeed. Funny, strange, peculiar, somehow not like the rest of us. Finally, from Fiona. Fiona, please, show me where you are, Fiona. Fiona, thank you for this, because again, I think it helps us understand the event that we've come to today. A depressingly familiar picture. She gives us these little vignettes. My first quote: a young boy with a pained expression, soldiering on with brain freeze, she says. A second vignette, drawing by himself, doing all the sound effects of machine gun noises. Another quote: he used to spend hours lining up his men in rows, then pull back a dragster toy to take them out, insisting that they were Mexicans. And finally, and slightly worryingly for me this one, hours of playing a game where we had to pretend to shoot him and he had to die. The game was called, and this is the worrying bit for me, Best Man Falls. A precursor perhaps. Kerry and I, she says, this is again Fiona, spent ages devising ways to get rid of him. I think we've understood. Usually it involved tying him up with lots of string, again confirming the story that Kerry told us, and hoping that he would never escape. His excited cries of, "Ooh, you're hurting me!" No pity. Fiona ends with this admission: Kerry and I may have gone mad. So, a tractor crashing, sock hanging, casually racist, gender bending, deeply violent, sociopathic game player with self-confessed, mentally unstable sisters. That is the best. That is the best that his close family can say of the man. But for those of us outside of Cliff's immediate family, we who can only know the public face of this man, well, over recent years, we've seen him transform himself, first from Clifford to Cliff, leaving the trouble behind. He then transformed himself from he was originally an artist, some of you may not know, an artist of unbridled passion, of potential and genuine repute. But again, he changed into a teacher of dubious repute, peddling his educational wares somewhere up near Hampstead Heath. And most recently, he's morphed once again into a kitchen installer. Sadly, very little repute whatsoever. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I digress, and I apologise for that, Sylvie and to Clifford. Let me first deal with the elephant in this room. Oui, il y a un éléphant dans cette pièce. An elephant. I can hear the church bell sounding now as terrified members of you wonder who exactly I'm going to pick out in the audience for elephant-based personal humiliation. Well, no, none of you. No, the elephant is not a person, it's not one of you, it's a question. It's this question. What is a double cousin? I know you've been asking it, those who don't understand. Or to put it another way, qu'est-ce que c'est un double cousin? Not very different, I admit. Well, let me explain, if I can change my page. I've heard many stories to explain why Clifford was born with 6 fingers on each foot and the face of a duck-billed platypus. I've heard rumours of animal husbandry, I've heard rumours of witchcraft, but the truth is even more bizarre. You see, our generation, the 1960s generation of Kerry, Fiona, Clifford and myself, we were quite simply the result of a Cold War scientific experiment gone horribly wrong. An experiment which surely can only have been born from the minds of a power-crazed military genius. By forcing the males of one family to marry and have regular social intercourse with the females of another, NATO hoped to produce a master race, an English-Welsh hybrid race to take on the Russian threat. Unfortunately, Clifford stands, could you please stand just for a moment, Clifford? Clifford stands before you today as the sad evidence that science can go very, very badly wrong. That he stands before you at all is testament, first of all, to years of partially successful facial reconstruction, and of course, to the fact that he wears a very special girdle that that becomes visible only during times of extreme drought. So clearly, thank you, Clifford. If you can, you may now be seated. So clearly, our friendship, Clifford and my friendship as two young boys trying to make sense of the cruel hand that life had dealt us, was born out of severe adversity. We were both the youngest at that time in our respective families. We were both the victims, as you've heard, of unrelentingly cruel older siblings. But our deepest pain, the pain that Clifford and I shared, was felt, as it so often is, in the world of fashion. As the youngest in our respective families, Clifford and I were forced by our parents, egged on, no doubt, by our evil siblings, into wearing the most ridiculous polyester-based floral shirt-tie short combinations that the dream sequence of a 1960s art house movie could ever have imagined. The shirts matched the ties matched the shorts, but most hideously of all, I matched Clifford and Clifford matched me. Well, I retaliated, of course, and joined the Young Ornithologists Club, but Clifford had no such outlet. He was deeply psychologically damaged, his senses reeling against the unholy mixture of primary colours in man-made fabrics, facing day after day after day of endless chafing. Cliff retreated deep into a world where only fashion meant anything and gave his life meaning. Clifford's obsession with the relative length of his cuffs and elasticated bow ties is something that it's very easy for you now to laugh about. But back then, it was the sort of inappropriate behaviour in a social context that would come to mark out so much of Clifford's later adult life. Something that should, at that time, have sparked a visit from social services, led only to one incident where Clifford cracked. Sadly, he was found roaming in downtown Talibon, muttering the word blankie, wearing only a plastic coat, swimming goggles, and of course, a bow tie matching shirt and short combination. Now, given all of this, it was no surprise to me and to his family that after struggling through school and college, Cliff ended up living for many years as a reclusive hermit in Notting Hill. Now, some of you may know of Notting Hill from the famous 1990s film of the same name, starring Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts. I'm equally sure that many of you, given the lights that we're dealing with today, and certainly that I'm dealing with right now, can look at Sylvie through what must be sort of rose-tinted spectacles. I know a lot of alcohol's been drunk, and particularly Clifford, and think you're looking at the equivalent of a film star. Certainly looking at Sylvie, she's giving Julia Roberts a genuine run for her money.
Yeah.
Beautiful, deepest embroidery. But Clifford, compared to Hugh Grant? Really? Where am I getting this comparison from? Sadly, no. I mean, the Notting Hill of Hugh Grant, the Notting Hill of style, of romance, of glamour. This was very definitely not the Notting Hill of Cliff Bevan. So where Hugh Grant lived in an attractive first-floor flat with furniture and fresh linen, Cliff lived in a small damp cave without any heating and only the very basics for personal hygiene. To eat, Cliff relied on small lumps of coal sent him every week by his kind mother from the derelict mines around Bryn Mawr. Whereas Hugh Grant enjoyed the company of an array of talented, beautiful, artistic friends, Clifford Hugh enjoyed the company of a family of mice and a ghost. And while Hugh went on to fame and stardom, Cliff was destined only for shame and boredom. Now, again, you may still be wondering, why am I forging this apparently unlikely link between Clifford Hugh Croysdale, our Clifford, and Hugh Clifford Grant, evil Clifford? Where is the link between self-aggrandising Hollywood disgrace, Hugh Grant, and self-styled Norman Wisdom impersonator and part-time cat juggler, Cliff Bevan? Well, as with so much in our lives, it's all because of one of our shared grandmothers, Nana Pauling, the female head of the English half of our family. And some of this may even come as news to my own family, but again, this is all true. She was a woman of deep intellect, great spirit, and blessed, let us not forget, by some of the greatest male grandchildren of this or of any generation. Despite the quality of her progeny, Nana found it appropriate to intersperse her photo albums with photos not of our Clifford, the artistic powerhouse with his even cuffs and his unusual hairpiece, no. Her family albums were increasingly dominated, not a word of a lie, in later life by photos of evil Cliffords, photos of Hugh Grant. There were sadly far more money shots in Nana's photo album of a reclining Hugh Grant than of a declining Cliff Bennett. Nana's wish to have Cliff effectively scrubbed out of our family history and replaced with Hugh Grant tells us much about the guilt she must have felt for the strange experiment that had created Clifford in the first place. Strange indeed. But what of Cliff's romantic life? Now is the moment. It's certainly typical in a best man speech to talk a little bit about the man I know and about those early stages, those early stirrings, if you like, the crushes, the adolescent yearnings that led him to the full realisation of what love can be. Well, here again, I'm afraid we draw a blank, or at least I wish we could. Some of Cliff's earliest, deeply troubled memories as a simple northern lad for me were of Cliff's deep, visceral, very physical love for his dog Kirsty. Surely the first lady Clifford ever truly called his darling. Again, not a word of a lie. But then there was Cliff's darker period of troubled sexuality, when he turned not to woman or even canine kind for fulfilment, but instead to a small plastic head and boot combination, known simply as Merlin. Now, like the wizard of Arthurian legend, Merlin entranced our young prince in a way that no woman ever would, until finally Sylvie found a way to quell, or at least accommodate, Clifford's undeniable thirst for canine, extraterrestrial, plastic-based love, based principally on physical abomination and rubbing his face into a dog's tummy whilst singing, "Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Kirsty time." Difficult to hear, I know, Sylvie, but I feel it is your right to know. Perhaps it is not too late, perhaps it already is, but to the best of my knowledge, this marriage has not yet been consummated. There is still time, Sylvie. They've been very busy this afternoon. Now, I know Cliff has always resented me for this insight, for seeing so early and so deeply into his dark, troubled soul. How do I know he resented me? Well, quite simply, ladies and gentlemen, because he tried to kill me. Again, at this point, I would ask children in the room to put on the noise-reducing pom-poms. I'm not talking here about a little toddler fight, some of the types we've seen around the garden this evening. A disagreement ending up with ice cream down one of our floral patterned shirts. No, I'm talking about the type of evil planning, deception and skillful execution that would have made Lee Harvey Oswald proud. Imagine the scene, if you will. Imagine first a young, naive,